Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is speaking about earthquake swarms. What are these earthquake swarms? They are nothing but a pattern of several small earthquakes. They occur in a specific region and they are for a small and a brief time period. In this particular backdrop, we have to understand what is the difference between a normal earthquake as well as the earthquake swarm. When it comes to the normal earthquake, it happens in a sequence. In this particular sequence of earthquake, there is a largest earthquake and that is what is called as the main shock. So kindly remember, when it comes to the normal earthquake, it happens on a time period and the largest earthquake is what is called as the main shock. Before the main shock, there are earthquakes that precede the largest earthquake and that is what is called as the foreshock. So the main shock is nothing but the largest earthquake, and before the largest earthquake strikes, there are series of earthquake which are of low intensity, which are of low magnitude, and that is what is called as the foreshocks. And after the larger event has taken place, we witness what is called as the aftershock. Aftershock is again nothing but smaller earthquakes that occur in that very region that can happen for days and also weeks as well, where this is one part of the land readjustment after the main earthquake has struck that particular region. When you look into this particular picture, as we initially discussed, it is a plot of time as well as magnitude as well. Since earthquake is a sequence of time and magnitude, when you look at the foreshocks, you actually see that the magnitude is comparatively less. When you look at the aftershocks, the magnitude again is comparatively less, but that is not the same when it comes to the main shock as well. Why? Because when it comes to the main shock, it is the largest earthquake as we see in the normal circumstances. Now let's understand the difference between the normal earthquake as well as the earthquake swarms. When you look into this particular first picture, what you actually see is the main shock, which happens to be the largest earthquake. That is not the same when it comes to the earthquake. Here what you actually witness is random amount of magnitude, and that is the major difference between the normal earthquake and the earthquake swarm. So there is no clear sequence of what is called as foreshock, there is no clear sequence of what is called as main quakes, and there is no sequence of aftershock as well. So whatever we see in the first normal earthquake, that is not witnessed when it comes to the earthquake swarm. Then we also have to understand that when it comes to the aftershock, which is about land adjustment after the main event has taken place, what we see is that this particular earthquake swarm is even shorter in duration, short lived in comparison to aftershocks as well. So basically, when we are speaking about swarms, they are nothing but low magnitude earthquakes that occur in a localized region over a period of time, which can range between days, weeks, or even months as well. How do they occur? We have the earth, which also has the seismic energy within the earth as well. So when this seismic energy is released in small amounts from certain points, such a series of earthquakes is what is called as the earthquake swarms. So these swarms are usually observed in the volcanic environments, hydrothermal systems, and other active geothermal areas as well. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about defense acquisition procedure. We have discussed about this issue in our last week's CNA as well. Our focus today would be with respect to the offset clause. Now the question is, what is this defense offset clause? When you have the Indian government entering into a contract with a foreign company. So let's say hypothetical numbers, India has entered into contract with the foreign company for about 1000 crores. What is this 1000 crores? The foreign company will be providing, let's say for example, jets, or it might be providing shipments, so on and so forth. So this foreign company has entered into a contract with Indian government for about 1000 crores. Out of this 1000 crores, let's say for example, the 30 is the offset clause. So what is this offset clause here? That 30%, which includes about 300 crores, will have to be redistributed, recontributed back into the Indian defense sector. That is what is called as the offset clause. Now you might ask me a question. How is that this offset clause is being used by the foreign companies, and how will they contribute to the Indian defense protocols? India is giving them about 1000 crores. Out of this 1000 crores, about 300 crores can be contributed by transfer of the technology, or they can enter into a contract with the Indian companies where the Indian companies capabilities can be enhanced, capacities can be enhanced, and now they contribute indirectly to the domestic industry as well. One is by technology advancement, where whatever technology they have, a partial technology is given through this particular contract, and that is how they are contributing. And the second is with respect to enhancing the capacities as well as the capabilities of the domestic industry. So this foreign agency, while meeting this particular obligation under this particular contract, had to sign how it will implement this particular protocol up until 2016 during the contract process. And after 2016, the government came up with certain avenues as well. Those avenues is in the form of foreign direct investment, where they could enter with the Indian enterprises for the eligible products and services, and at the same time they can also make investment in kind in terms of transfer of technology to the Indian enterprises as well. So what we realize is that all these offset clauses will have to be met by the foreign companies on the basis of two criteria. One, before 2016, where they have to explicitly say how this contract will be implemented. After 2016, the government gave them certain avenues, and they had to pick these avenues that was given by the defense ministry. Now that we have understood this, we have to go back and understand when this particular process of offset clause introduced in India. The policy was adopted on the recommendation of Vijay Kelkar committee in the year 2005. So a defense offset policy was promulgated under the defense procurement procedure, that is DPP 2005. Under the DPP 2006, the offset was initially put up at 30%, which is about whatever the contract value. If the contract value is 10,000 crores, they will have to reintroduce the same for about 3,000 crores. If it is about 1 lakh, they have to introduce about 30,000 crores back into the Indian defense sector. That was what was laid in DPP 2006, where the offset value was fixed at 30% of the defense deal above 300 crores. This was when this offset clause was introduced. Now the question is, the government has come up with the new defense acquisition procedure. According to this procedure, the government will no more have this offset policy for the government to government agreements, ab initio single contract, or intergovernmental agreements, but this will continue to be present in all other international deals that are competitive in nature, that have multi vendors vying for it, and this will continue to have this 30% offset clause. But if it is intergovernmental, let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, India is entering into a contract with France, which is a government of India entering into a contract with government of France. That is when there will be no offset. If India is entering into a contract with a single vendor, let's say for example Dassault Aviation in this particular case, even then there will be no offset clause. But if there are multiple vendors who are coming up, and if they are vying for this particular competition, that is when 30% offset clause will be present, says according to the defense acquisition procedure. Earlier we had it for every type of agreement and contract, and now it is only for the multi-vendor contract, says this defense acquisition procedure. Now you have to understand why was this particular clause removed by the government of India. That is because according to the government of India, whenever India is signing a contract with a foreign company, in case they have this particular offset clause, they used to shoot up the contract value. Let's say for example, ideally the contract would have been about 500 crores, but because there is an offset, they would have increased it to about 1000 crores. So increasing the contract value is why the government has now decided there will be no offset in the near future, but only if it is a multi-vendor contract, only then the offset clause will be there, says the government of India. Now we also have to understand with respect to the CAG as well. Recently, the CAG report was shown in the Parliament of India as well, and they have said that previous offset clauses that India had entered with multiple vendors as well as government is not met, and none of these criterias and parameters were met by the foreign vendors. Let's take the example. According to the CAG has made a critical analysis of the previous offsets. From the first contract, when did we sign the first contract? It was in the year 2007, and up until March 2018, CAG has said that there were nearly 46 offset contracts, which was to an amount of 66,427 crores. On the whole, from 2007 till 2018, about 19,223 crores were the offset that was supposed to be fulfilled up until 2018. Instead of fulfilling this criteria, what we currently have is only 11,396 crores that are met up. Ideally, 19,223 crores should have been given back to India in the form of offset clause, but that is not met, and we currently have this being met for about 59% of the offsets. The rest 41% is not met, says the CAG report, which was presented in the Parliament. And at the same time, when you subtract this 11,396 from the original amount, this goes up to nearly 55,000 crores. This 55,000 crores will have to be met by the year 2024. The CAG is not sure, and it says that this obligation of the offset clause, where they have to fulfill about 55,000 crores, will not be met under the clause entered by the government of India. So it says that offset clause introduced by the government as a part of contract will not be met, and India is going to suffer through this particular offset clause contract, says the CAG during its particular report. So basically, going forward, what we will have is the offset clause being removed by the government of India, but it will persist only if there are multiple vendors entering into a contract. It will not be present for the intergovernmental one, it will not be present for a single vendor, and it will not be provided for the government to government agreements, says this particular defense acquisition procedure. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about WhatsApp and its leak. We recently witnessed issues of WhatsApp chat of Bollywood celebrities being discussed by the media. There are three issues involved in this particular issue. One is the drug issue, the second is the privacy issue, the third is about the technology. The first two issues have been discussed in the past 1 or 2 weeks. But what is our focus today? Our focus today would be on technology and the encryption of WhatsApp. When it comes to WhatsApp, the first important question is, does WhatsApp have access to the chats? The answer is a simple no. Let's say, for example, if I have sent a message to someone, and if someone is reading the messages, then only both of us would be able to read that particular message. The third party would not be able to read this particular message, says WhatsApp. That is the most important factor. Until 2016, there was this particular provision, but from 2016, there is end-to-end encryption taken care by the WhatsApp, so the third party will not be able to read this particular message. The next question is, those who have the access to the servers, will they be able to read the messages? The answer is once again no. Up until 2016, there were certain vulnerabilities when it comes to accessing of the servers. This has again been changed. Now there is encryption of the WhatsApp messages, and even if they have access to the servers, they would not be able to read the messages. WhatsApp also says it does not store any type of message on its servers once they are delivered to the recipients. How does WhatsApp make sure that this communication between the sender and the recipient is secure? That is through the technology and the encryption protocol, which is developed by OpenWhisper system. And at the same time, the technology that is using is called as the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Kindly remember these two important encryption tools. The UPSC will not go this deep, but in case it is asked in the preliminary examination, you should be able to know that Diffie-Hellman key exchange exchange is one of the encryption tools. Also, we have to understand, can leaks still happen when it comes to WhatsApp? The answer is a plain yes. Let me give you an example. We all have WhatsApps, we all chat as well, and periodically what we have is pop-ups that come in the form of backup. As long as there is no backup, as long as they are deleted, the chats are deleted, there will be no possibility of any person eavesdropping into it or hacking into it because it is encrypted. But if there is a process of backup where third party steps in, that is where any other person would be able to read the chats as well. Let's say in this particular case, in case you're putting this particular information on the cloud, which includes the Google Drive or the iCloud, that is when it can be decrypted and this information can be read as well. But if it is within the two people and it is not used as a backup in the cloud storage, then there is no possibility of any other person reading this particular message. The next question is, are there any other vulnerabilities? The answer once again is yes. Why? Because there is something called as bugs. What are these bugs? These are the software deficiencies with respect to that particular application. Let's say for example, there is a loophole within that particular software. So the hackers or people who are involved in developing the software look for these loopholes, and using these loopholes they would still be able to access or eavesdrop into that particular communication. One of the examples was in the year 2019 where WhatsApp revealed that there is a spyware tool called as Pegasus. This spyware tool was developed by Israel's NSO group. What did they do? They started spying on about 1,400 people across the world, including civil rights activists as well as journalists in India. So using these software loopholes, using these deficiencies within that particular application, there can be people who would be able to exploit the vulnerability within that particular application. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. This was initiated in the year 2013 by the United Nations General Assembly, which declared September 26th to be the day of International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons. The aim of this particular day is to make sure that people know, are aware of the devastation of the nuclear weapons, how this nuclear weapon could be a problem to the entire humanity. So what they seek is for total elimination of these nuclear weapons. And in this particular backdrop, India in this particular United Nations conference has also spoken about no first use policy which India has in its nuclear policy. There are two types of countries. One is what is called as the nuclear country. For example, it can be Pakistan or it can be China as well. Then there is another country called as the non-nuclear country. India has a simple philosophy. When it comes to the nuclear country, it will not first launch this nuclear missile on a country which possesses nuclear weapons. And if there is a country which is non-nuclear in nature, let's say for example Bangladesh, or let's say for example Sri Lanka, in all these countries, even if there is a country which attacks us, there will be no use of nuclear weapons, says the India's nuclear policy. So when it comes to the nuclear countries, we would not be launching the nuclear missiles first time, but if it is happening from their side, India will make sure that it launches its nuclear missiles and will create a devastation that will inflict maximum pain on the country which has the nuclear weapons. If there are no nuclear weapons, that which is persisting in that country, India will never use the nuclear weapons, is our nuclear policy. Looking into this particular analogy, India currently says that it is always ready for the universal, verifiable, non-discriminatory nuclear disarmament. So this nuclear disarmament should be universal. It is not about we having it, China not having it, or China having it, we not having it. It has to be a uniform application universally, where all countries in a transparent way, non-discriminatory way, give away their nuclear weapons, and if that possibility is present, we will also comply by it, says India with respect to this article. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Hindan River is a tributary of, is it Godavari, Narmada, Yamuna or Indus? The answer to this is Yamuna. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, it originates in Saharapur district from the upper Shivaliks in Uttar Pradesh. The river is entirely rain-fed. Also remember, when it comes to this particular river, since it flows through the state of Uttar Pradesh, there is heavy pollution in this particular river. Why? Because there are industries located on the borders of this particular river. They just dump, discharge all the effluents without even treating them. And as a result, this particular river has become very polluted during its progress. And we also have to remember, since all these chemical effluents are dumped directly into this particular river without any treatment, this can also create health risk as well, because these waterways are used for drinking water, and it is also a process where it is also used for agriculture as well. Since it is used for drinking water, since it is used for agriculture, there could be an impact for the health, is what we have to understand with respect to this particular issue. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to Maduka diplolesmon. It is a species of flowering plant from Saptosae family. It is endemic to India. It has been listed as critically endangered by IUCN. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? This is not listed as critically endangered. Instead, it is endangered, that is defined by the IUCN. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, Maduka diplosmum, which is also belonging to the family Saptosae, is a threatened species of the Western Ghats whose specimen was first collected in 1835. The lone mature tree was located in this particular case near the Shiva temple at Kollam. Also remember, it is endemic to India as well. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following exercises with India are correctly matched? Bongo Saga, Bangladesh, Varuna, Sri Lanka, Konkan, Thailand. The answer to this is 1 only. Why? Varuna is not with Sri Lanka, but instead it is with France, and Konkan is not with Thailand, instead it is with United Kingdom. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. This happens to be the second edition. So the first edition was conducted in the year 2019. This is a bilateral naval exercise between the Indian Navy as well as the Bangladesh Navy. So what is the objective? The objective is plainly simple, that is to develop interoperability, joint operational skills, how by the maritime exercises conducted periodically by both these naval forces. This article further goes on to say the US Navy's P-8 long-range maritime patrol aircraft has got the accessibility to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands for refueling for the very first time under the Limau Agreement, which India has entered with United States of America. Now let's look into the next practice question. Nouméa record is a promise by the French Republic to grant political power to, is it Reunion Islands, is it Guadeloupe, is it New Caledonia, or is it Mayotte? The answer to this is New Caledonia. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, this New Caledonia is one of the territories which happens to be the overseas France territory. We have one of the accord that is called as the Nouméa Accord. What is this? This is a promise made by the French Republic to grant political power to the New Caledonia. So there are indigenous people called as the Kanak population, and there were foreign settlers as well, and that is in the form of European settlers. So there is some fight that is happening between the indigenous community as well as the foreign settlers. So this indigenous community is now seeking for independence away from France. So there will be referendum as well, and if this referendum works and if the majority of them want for it, they will have an independent territory of their own. So what is that we have to understand? If the referendum works and if they have the majority, France will give up this particular territory and it will also stop giving the subsidies from France, which provides about 1.5 billion in financial support annually. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. The sun's magnetic field changes polarity approximately every 11 years. The sun's magnetic influence extends well past the planets and into the interstellar space. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, the sun's polarity reverses every 11 years, and when it comes to the sun's influence, the sun sends out a constant flow of energy that is in the form of solar wind, which ultimately travels past all the planets to some 3 times the distance even to the Pluto as well. Also remember, this article makes a mention of the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. This is a solar observatory owned and operated by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. It is on the southern tip of Palani Hills, 4 km from Kodaikanal town, Dindigul district in the state of Tamil Nadu. Kindly remember, this could be a question when it comes to your preliminary examination. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Sonartia cassiolaris, which of the following statements are correct? It is a species of plant in the family Linthaceae whose leaves and fruit are edible and appreciated as food in certain areas. It is endemic to India. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why? Because the second statement is wrong. It is not endemic to India. It is present in tropical tidal mudflats from Africa to Indonesia, southwards down to northeast Australia and New Caledonia, and northwards up to Hainan Island in China, as well as Philippines as well. The leaves and the fruit are edible and they are appreciated as food in Maldives as well. It is a species of plant in the family of Linthaceae and it is commonly called as mangrove apple. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. In the context of India, which of the following principles is or implied institutionally in the parliamentary government? Members of the cabinet are members of the parliament. Ministers hold office till they enjoy confidence in the parliament. Cabinet is headed by the head of the state. This is the wrong statement. So the answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Now let's look into the mains practice question. What do you understand by an earthquake swarm? How is it different from a major earthquake? Next question. Discuss the key changes introduced in the latest defense acquisition procedure 2020. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review, come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.